Hi, I'm Danielle Bassoni with Time for Change Kitchen. Today we are going to make an amazingly delicious Tuscan soup, and these are the ingredients we're going to use. We are going to use, I'll probably use about half of this kale. This is very compressed, and I like a lot of kale in my soup. If you don't want that much, just use what you like. This is all very personal, so you just do whatever it is you like. I'm going to set this aside for now because we're going to add that last. And we are going to use 3 of these peppers, and this is the right size. If I have bell peppers, I'll use those, but these are in season right now and they're very fresh, so I'd like to use those. We're going to have 2 stalks of celery, half of a large onion, 1 pound of button mushrooms, 2 fairly large carrots, and we're going to have 4 cups of sliced potatoes. And also, we're going to make a thickener in which we will be using a different kind of potatoes. These are Yukon Gold, and they hold up very well when they're cooked in a soup. And russet potatoes do not hold up so well when they're cooked over a long period of time. They tend to disintegrate. But they have plenty of starch, and they're perfect for making a thickener. And I'm also going to use 1/4 cup of cashews, and these will thicken our broth. I'm also going to use some of the bean juice and some of the juice from making these potatoes. We're also using 2 cups of cannellini beans, and I have a video on how to make these. And we're using about 1 cup of russet potatoes. And I have videos on how you can make both of these, cook both of these very easily in your Instant Pot. So I'm setting these to the side because we'll use those last. And also we are using 2 sausages. These are filled roast sausages, which is a vegan sausage. And they have been divided down the middle and cut into these nice little half rounds, which is perfect bite-sized sausage. And this sort of gives it the authenticity of a Tuscan soup without giving you animal protein. And this is what the label for that looks like. You get 4 in a package. We are going to be seasoning it with thyme. This is 2 tablespoons of thyme and 1 tablespoon, and this is optional, of crushed organic red pepper. And it's very important to use organic peppers when you're using peppers, because they have a particularly toxic pesticide often associated with them, particularly neurotoxins. Okay, so we are going to cut up our vegetables for the soup. We'll peel off this outer layer of onion, and we'll save this for another type of stock that I'll show you how to make it another day. And so I just like to cut these into thin julienne pieces. This is 1/2 of a large onion. And we can actually take this and go ahead and put it into our soup pot. I have experimented in making this soup a number of different ways, and I have found that it comes out better if I just dump the fresh vegetables right into the pot and then put the flavorful stock on top of that. I have tried caramelizing them to different and sauteing them to different degrees of doneness, and I feel like these vegetables retain their integrity far better and far more pleasant to eat when you just cook them in the stock. The stock has already been cooked with such flavorful caramelized vegetables that it has a really good taste to it, and so you don't really need to cook the vegetables down, and you can preserve their integrity and have a nice mouthfeel when you eat them. So this is a pound of button mushrooms. You can use whatever size you have. This is just what was available to you. I like to cut my carrots on an angle just because I think they look nicer. Cut them in nice little bite-sized pieces, about 1/8 of an inch thick. That's too small. Okay, and I do the same thing with my celery. I cut my celery a little bit thinner. And by the way, you can substitute with whatever vegetable you like. If you don't like mushrooms, some people have a strange relationship to the texture of mushroom. And you can add zucchini instead. Zucchini is actually a more authentic ingredient for Tuscan soup. I just happen to like mushrooms a lot. And zucchinis are not in season, so I prefer not to use them. Now the potato I cut across the top, and then I cut them into not quite, a little bigger than 1/8, not quite 1/4 of an inch. And that's a nice bite-sized piece. And it cooks fairly quickly too. I love Yukon Gold potatoes. I use them almost exclusively in my cooking. To make sure that I had no more than 4 cups. I tend to really like potatoes, but I sometimes make more potatoes than I have stock to have broth to cook it in. So I want to be careful not to do that. One more small one. Okay, so that's right at 4 cups. I'm going to put it back in here just to see where it fits in here, just for my own information. So it's not quite full. That's good to know. We want to cut these into nice little pieces that are not so big that you don't want that you have to eat them in several bites. You want them to be bite-sized pieces. So this is an interesting way to cut bell peppers that I like. You just you cut both ends off, put your knife and go all the way down through it, and then open it up and just cut off these little segments, which are wonderful in your stock, in your broth. I keep saying stock, but it's broth. The difference between a stock and a broth is that a stock is made with animal bones and a broth is made with vegetables and aromatic herbs. And so we just cut across here. And this is a small enough pepper that these slices are perfect. If it was a really big pepper, I would cut these slices across in half to make them more edible and more enjoyable to eat. Now for these long peppers, I do this a little differently. I just pull out that stem, and then I just cut it down the side, cut it all the way through. Okay, and we'll do the same with this. Of course, these peppers have been washed. These peppers are gorgeous. I like them better than bell peppers because they're a gorgeous red and they're very sweet and they're just really so delicious. They have more flavor, in my opinion, and than a red pepper does, than a red bell pepper does. Okay, so that's the end of our vegetables. So now we'll take this to the stove, to our stove top, and we'll fill it with vegetable broth that we've made ourselves. Or you can use commercial broth if that's what you have on hand. This is heavy. This is a really, really delicious dish. Okay, we've brought our soup ingredients to the stove top, and I'm turning this on high just for now. And to this, we are going to add this marvelous soup stock or broth, vegetable broth, to this dish. And we are going to let this cook. Perfect. And we're going to let this cook until the potatoes are done, the onions are translucent, and the mushrooms have released their liquids, and the peppers are soft but still maintain their integrity, so they have a nice mouthfeel. I'm going to cover this and bring this to a soft boil, and then I'm going to remove the lid, and we are going to cook this for possibly 10 to 15 minutes. While our Tuscan soup is cooking, and we will cook it until the potatoes are fork tender, the onions are translucent, and as well as the celery and the peppers have reached a consistency that's not crunchy. It's soft, but still has a firm mouthfeel. Okay, and so while that is happening, we are going to make our thickener. And so we're using our Vitamix, and we're putting in about a cup of pre-cooked russet potato. This was half of a large potato, but since they come in different sizes, I think it's better to go by measurement. So this is about a cup. And we're going to add a quarter a cup of cashews. And I want to point out that if this soup is a little too thin, and that happens sometimes when you're varying ingredients all the time, like I do when I'm cooking, depending on how many I'm cooking for, I will adjust the amount of cashews I use. So if I feel that this isn't creamy enough or milky enough when I'm done adding the sauce, I will put some more cashews in with a little broth and thicken it up a little bit more. And so this is juice from the cannellini beans that I cooked. And so I don't like to waste anything, so I'm just going to pour that in that. And that also acts as a little bit of a thickener. Although this isn't going to be a thick soup, I believe I can also add this. This is water from cooking the potatoes, which will add a little more thickness to it. And so, because I'm a safety girl and you don't want to ruin your ears, whenever I use high-powered electrical equipment, high-powered appliances, I always wear earplugs, because once your hearing is gone, it's gone. So you may as well just take care of it. This is on low. I'm going to turn this on. Okay, so this is the way it should look, and you can look on the wand and see. It should be creamy enough, but not too terribly thick. And the main thing is that all the cashews should be ground up into a smooth cream, and the potatoes skins should be ground up into this. I like to keep the potato skins because I just can't bear to throw away nutrition. And so we will set this aside, and when the soup is done, we'll show you what to do with it. Okay, so this has come to a nice little boil, and it's a kind of a fast simmer, and I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. And you can see that the mushrooms have released their moisture, and that as have all of the vegetables, and they are now floating in this liquid that barely covered them before. And now I want to check the potatoes and see if they are at all close to being done, because we have to pay attention to that. And it barely wants to let me bite into it, so they need quite probably another 5 minutes, as do the rest of the vegetables. I forgot to mention that at this point I wanted to add the 2 tablespoons of thyme. Now I want to point out regarding the thyme is that I'm using thyme from my garden, and so it's whole leaves and it's not as condensed as the thyme that you buy commercially. So I know that this is the appropriate amount for this dish. But if I were using commercial thyme, I would start with a teaspoon and taste it and see how it goes. Because I have experience making this dish, and I'm using my own thyme that I've harvested from my garden, and I know that this is the proper amount. And I'm also going to add a tablespoon of organic crushed red pepper. And also from experience, I know that this is the way I like it. We are also going to be adding chipotle sausages, which are a little bit spicy, so you have to decide whether or not you want that extra spice in it. I personally like it, but you may not. We are not going to add the chipotle sausage, or this is field roast sausage, or and it's vegan. Nor are we going to add the cannellini beans until this is just about ready, until the vegetables are cooked to the point that we want them, because these are already cooked and we only need to heat them through. So now I'm going to cover this and let it cook just a few minutes more, and then we'll see where we are. Okay. This has been cooking for about 5 minutes at a slow simmer, and the onions look fantastic. Everything looks good, and so I just want to test these potatoes. Here's one. And so that's pretty good. That's going all the way to the center, but it's not real soft. And at this point, we are going to add the cannellini beans. And the chipotle sausage. And this really gives it that whole wonderful Tuscan soup quality. And we're going to add the cashew cream thickener. This is russet potato and cashew cream, along with a little of the potato juice and the bean juice. Now, cashews tend to thicken as they cook. But this will give it that lovely milky appearance that belongs to Tuscan soup. And I'm going to add a little bit of water to this, to the rest of this cream sauce, so I can get it all. So I've just swished a little water around in this Vitamix so that I could get all of that wonderful cream sauce. I hate to waste it. And this is the consistency that we want. That's really gorgeous. And that I need to taste it. This is absolutely lovely. Now, if you feel that you need a little more salt, add it by all means. I have a sensitivity to salt, so I encourage you to back off on the amount of salt you use, because it's very damaging to our health. And it only takes about 3 days to get used to not eating salt. And so now I'm going to add kale. And I like quite a bit of kale in my soup. And so I add as much as I want, and you can do the same. I dropped a little piece I'm going to have to toss, unfortunately. And this was kale that was picked yesterday. And so it's just marvelous, and we'll cook this down, and at that point I'll decide if I want to add more. That's beautiful. I think I will add a little more. So this is a gorgeous soup that is perfect for these fall evenings. We're just starting to get our first freezes, so this is the time that you enjoy hot things to eat and drink. And so this is soup season, and I couldn't wait for it. And I know my husband couldn't, because he really enjoys hot things to eat and drink. Okay, so this is ready. Look at how gorgeous this is. Now that is a hearty soup. I'm going to add a little more green to that. So there we have it. I'm Danielle Bassoni, serving up whole foods for whole health.